Michael Porter Jr. in the series against Minnesota, there is no way to disguise it. He was not good. And it was obviously an issue because the shot wasn't falling. And when the shot doesn't fall for Michael Porter Jr., it seems like the rest of his game suffers. Against Minnesota, 10.7 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, and a shooting of an abysmal 37.1%, just slightly worse than that 32.5% on three. That in itself wasn't disastrous, but on the whole, it really was. So the idea with Porter Jr., who is signed through the 2026-2027 season, and makes at this point 35 plus million a year. The idea of maybe trading him is the case. I will give this to fans first to understand, though. In the regular season, here's were his numbers: 16.7 points per game, 7.0 rebounds per game, 48.4% shooting. In the playoffs as a whole, because as subpar as he was against the Timberwolves, he was really good against the Lakers.
And maybe even save them from having to play a sixth or seventh game against the Lakers because they were behind for 70% of that series. He bailed them out.
So in the playoffs, 15.8 points, 6.8 rebounds. So he went down 0.9 points and 0.2 rebounds. His shooting went from 48.4 to 46.6. Not huge. The overall playoff performance in line with his regular season numbers, but the way that it changed from series to series, you can't ignore that.
You can't ignore it. And my reaction to Porter throughout this season, and particularly during the course of the playoffs, is a layered reaction. There wasn't a single Nugget, and there could have been several, who stood up as Porter did and said, I lost this series for us. Because in 5 of the 7 games, including each of the last 4 of this series, 2 of which were won by the Nuggets, 2 of which were won by the Timberwolves, he scored in single digits. Good for him to step up. And that earned him additional respect in the locker room, I'm sure. But when you're playing on a max deal, you've got to play like a max player. And neither during the regular season or overall during the playoffs did he play entirely like a max player. And the standards are very high. Maybe he can meet those standards. We were commenting up until a few months ago about how the Nuggets at some point would have to make a choice as to which of 2 players to keep, Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon. I would expand that circle a bit now to include Jamal Murray. I don't believe in the long term the Nuggets can keep all 3.
Porter Jr. after the series said, quote, "This was a terrible series. I felt like I might have had 1 or 2 good games out of the 7 we played. Part of it was the way they were guarding. Part of it was that my shot wasn't falling. It's tough because I know that if I played up to par with how I normally play, we would have won this series. And there's a lot of things that could have been different as a team, but I know if I played my part, we would have won the series, and I've got to live with that." Well, it's worth noting Porter also played in 81 games this year. He broke the franchise record for three-pointers made in a single season. The second half of the season, his shooting splits were 50, 40, 90. So better than 50% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90%
and that
from
is
the free
max
throw
player
line.
stuff.
That is, and only when you talk about that shooting percentage, only 4 players in the NBA even tried more three-pointers than Porter and hit them at a higher percentage. And you probably know them: Steph Curry, Paul George, CJ McCollum, and then Dante DiVincenzo. But Porter Jr. is way taller than all of them. And prior to Game 7, Timberwolves coach Chris Finch talked a little bit about the difficulty of that matchup. He said he's so dangerous with the size. You have to be mindful of how far you are off on him at any time. He's got great size and shoots the ball high, a quick release, and a sidestep dribble. Fortunately, we're able to put some size on him too, which could help bother him. And that was it. And I think when you do look at this a little bit, when we look at the Avalanches getting beat by the Stars, and we look at the top line not connecting, at a certain point, I think you don't give the Stars their respect and realize this is a very disciplined, smart defensive team. They made life difficult. Jaden McDaniels is an outstanding one-on-one defender with length. And some of this may be that Porter Jr. also had a really tough matchup against a guy who can defend him well.
I don't disagree with any of that. But the fact of the matter is Jaden McDaniels is not a max player, and Michael Porter Jr. is. And that was the one matchup that actually intrigued me most of all going into this series, among many that intrigued me. That was at the top of the list because I wasn't sure how it would turn out based on the fact that McDaniels didn't play in the series last year between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets.
Right.
And Porter did fairly well against the people who were trying to defend him. This year, McDaniels was healthy, played big minutes, played in every game. Early in the series, I thought, interestingly enough, while Denver was losing, Michael Porter was doing better individually. As Denver got better in the series, apart from the 7th game, and obviously the 6th game was a disaster on all fronts. That wasn't just Michael Porter. It seemed like McDaniels was slowly but surely gaining the edge in that matchup. And that allowed Minnesota to do what no team has ever done before: win the first 2 games of the best-of-7 series on the road, lose the next 3, and come back and win the last 2, including a 3rd road win in Game 7.
The challenge with trading someone like Michael Porter Jr., who at $35.8 million, $35.9 million rounding up, he will have the 35th highest salary in the entire NBA coming into next year. 35th. He has the exact same contract, literally exact, because he's got the rookie max, as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It is exactly the same. It ends at exactly the same time. They make exactly the same money. That's 35th highest in the league. So the question is, who wants to take that on if they believe that Porter Jr. is maybe past the back problems, and maybe that playing 81 games indicates that he is, but then who wants to trade you a $30 million guy that is somehow going to be an upgrade from Porter Jr.? Could you go get, maybe if you wanted to go older, maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing a name out hypothetically. I don't see why they'd want to, but okay. The salary should match. A Chris Middleton, same position from the Bucks. Okay, would that be an upgrade for the Nuggets? Possibly, but why would the Bucks do it? What are you at a point where you can go get guys that play those same positions? Do you want to try to go see if you can pry Porzingis from the Celtics? Well, they're still playing. Why would you want that?
There's
Andrew
no way.
Wiggins from the Warriors. They're not going to make those trades.
The Wiggins thing is kind of interesting to me.
Wiggins
peaked.
He makes
in
$27 million.
I know it works with the money. I think it might work. That's the one name that might work in more than just financial ways where there's a match, because I sense a little bit of disappointment in San Francisco with Wiggins, and maybe a little bit here with Porter. And I say a little bit because to blame him solely for the loss against Minnesota, as he blamed himself, is unfair. No. And good for him to step forward and take on that responsibility for losing the series. But the fact of the matter is he didn't. And for those who were inclined to react strongly to my commentary about Michael Malone yesterday, I just want to clarify a couple of things. And I'm not taking back a single word of what I said.
If you missed it, go to milesports.com or the app and go get it. It was...
I did not at any point yesterday advocate for the firing of Michael Malone, nor did I at any point yesterday place sole blame for losing the series on Michael Malone. I merely faulted him for his Game 7 mismanagement that, in my humble opinion, was a major reason as to why the Nuggets lost Game 7, as distinguished from the series. And I also didn't particularly take to his post-game reaction, which, by the way, was challenged. Just the commentary, forget about the behavior. Even his commentary was challenged by Jamal Murray, who, upon being informed of Michael Malone's comments that the Nuggets were just tuckered out after a long championship season and a short offseason, said, quote unquote, that makes no sense to me. So I'm not the only one who's in disagreement or disappointed in the way Michael Malone handled himself on Sunday.
I think that trading Michael Porter Jr. is going to be tough. It's obviously the money is going to be difficult, and you're going to have to be in a partnership with somebody who doesn't like some of the things from their own player. You want me to throw a dart out there? If you really want to swing big Nuggets fans, you could throw in a Zeke Naji or someone who makes just a little bit of money, and you could take a swing at John Morant if you want a guy that can handle the ball and a guy that can score. The salaries very closely match up. Memphis is certainly done with that deal. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess if you're the Nuggets, you could ask. Of course, if that was the case,